Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. Well, it's spring again. Grass is growing, birds are nesting, flowers are blooming, and there's a beehive underneath my back porch. That's not a euphemism or a metaphor of any nature. It's just a fact of my life that I'm currently having to deal with. But all that being said, it's still a part of spring. Spring is a time of rejuvenation, a time of new life. And so, during this season of new life, I felt like watching a movie about assassins trying to take over the world. The Assassination Bureau. Well, a few assassins trying to take over the world, or at the very least, Europe. Either way, this film takes place at close to the turn of the century, particularly building on the volatility that was entrenched in Europe right before World War I. And, okay, so that's our time and setting. Diana Rigg stars as an up-and-coming journalist who has the story of the century. She has discovered a confederation of trained killers that may or may not be shifting worldly events, towards the brink of disaster. Okay, so she does her best to uncover their whereabouts and actually locates one of their offices. Wouldn't you know it, it's located in London. Anywho, Diana Rigg meets Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed plays the dashing and beguiling Ivan Dragomilov. And he is the leader of the Assassination Bureau Limited. Limited, we need to have that insurance covered. Anyways, so she gives a commission. She extends an assignment to the Bureau. Specifically, the elimination of Ivan Dragomilov. Now, Ivan is the son of the man who established the Assassination Bureau. So he inherited the Assassination Bureau, as a right. And because of this, he actually has a certain executive privilege. He has the authority and the privilege to accept any commission on the behalf of the entire Assassination Bureau. So, as absurd as it sounds, he actually accepts the commission of his own assassination. Why does he do this? Because he sees this as an opportunity to clean house and to purge the Bureau of who he considers unsavory characters. Well, they're all paid killers. I mean, aren't they all unsavory? Ivan has certain philosophical desires for the Bureau. In his father's time, it was established that they would only kill evil people. This is what is set in the film. It was from a much more, what he considered, a moralistic standpoint. So, seeking out the profane, the corrupt, those were the most viable targets. Not only just the targets that were commissioned to them based on the highest, bounty, whatever you want to call it, like the highest price. So if anyone came to them with any kind of promise of high profit, then they would take it. That's where he feels, Ivan, that's where he feels that the Bureau is headed towards an unfortunate downward spiral, that they're just taking any mission, and it doesn't matter who the target is. It doesn't matter why the target has been targeted for elimination. I really enjoy this movie. This actually, I have not done any particular amount of research, but anyone who has ever read Terry Pratchett Discworld novels will also, there's some interesting similarities. Like, you can almost feel that this was the template for the Assassin's Guild in the Discworld series. You have this initial meeting between Diane Rigg and Oliver Reed, and it sort of feels like who would you like to have inhumed? You feel that sort of chemistry. There is a lot of comedy about this. It's very playful with regards to there's a little bit of back and forth. Diana Rigg feels that if she has Yvonne eliminated, then when you cut the head off the snake, then the body will follow. That being said, if you decapitate anything, really, I don't think anything in nature could actually survive. Debatably mushrooms, but they're actually an amalgamation of both flora and fauna. Anyways, this isn't a science channel. I'm talking about a movie. Continuing. So she feels that if he's eliminated, then the entirety of the Bureau will cease to exist and the world will be a better place. They have this philosophical sort of like back and forth, and neither of them actually come to an agreement as to whose position is necessarily right or wrong. So what I mean by that is they remain adamant in their positions throughout the entirety of it. And I like that. I actually do like that these characters don't necessarily compromise each other's viewpoints. It seemed almost poised for some kind of sequel that was never actually made, unfortunately, because the entertainment value that you get from this is something very similar to some of the best early James Bond movies. Like, there's a certain ludicrousness, there's a certain vitality, like, to the action and to the humor. So, like, that is something that I cannot stress enough, is that it's a really good combination of action and comedy in its own absurd, like, way. Some of the gags get slightly repetitive, and I've already given away too much. I usually hold back on spoilers when I make these videos, but this one is just like, there's so much to discuss if you enjoy this type of camp. And it really is camp, because you can't take it too seriously. Yes, there is some back and forth about, oh, but if things get even worse in Europe, we might have a war on our hands. I don't know, a war that might affect the entire world. I don't know, but that sounds like a war that would end all wars. That seems absurd. There's a wonderful line that, like, even though certain malevolent agents within the Bureau actually do want to cause chaos for the sake of profit. They want to cause chaos in Europe, and they don't really care if the world, ignites in just a ball of purely nationalistic destructive fire, across the entire map. Well, that means more money in their coffers. The main antagonist of this film is Telly Savalas. Telly Savalas plays Lord Bostwick. I'm not entirely sure if they were attempting to make Telly Savalas British, necessarily. It could be that he was just an up-and-coming... Because he plays sort of like a newspaper baron, based out of the United Kingdom. And I don't know if it was someone who just traveled across the pond and then just tried to sort of purchase his lordship, if you will. I mean, it does happen. It did happen a long time ago, and it does happen now, actually. A lot of various, like, billionaires and whatnot do try to obtain legal status as aristocracy. I mean, that's not something that's unheard of. But Telly Savalas as Lord Bostwick, like I said, I don't know if he's supposed to be British or otherwise, because I'll put it to you this way. He has about as much of an English accent as Kevin Costner. And I'll sort of I'll just leave it at that. Anyways, but these characters, they have wonderful chemistry. The action it's punchy, it's not particularly overwhelming, and the humor is so well choreographed and well placed, like just throughout. And it's a wonderful balance. Like I said, I compared it to some of what people would consider some of the more outlandish early entries in, like, the James Bond series. Like I said, great action, great humor. I honestly give this a rather, like, even though it's camp, it is purely camp, but it's fun. I'm going to give this a solid 7 out of 10. For for what it is, I really can't fault it. You're not. This is one of those wonderful popcorn films that you know you're not supposed to take seriously, and you just go along for the ride. So that's my review of the Assassination Bureau. Have you seen the film? If you have, what were your thoughts on it? This is also an incredibly quotable movie. There's at one point where Ivan Dragomilov mentions how he wants to, circumvent the possibility of a war because being the chairman of a guild of assassins, is it like, well, how could we possibly ever turn a profit if people are just killing each other left and right, day in, day out for a shilling apiece? That'll definitely cut into our profit. And this is done humorously. He's not adamant or really stalwart about oh no, the only reason that you should kill is for money. Another character actually criticizes well, you're not an assassin, you're a critic because the men body of the Bureau doesn't meet his moralistic ideals. I like seeing this. It almost makes me think I really like the prospect of this was the Assassination Bureau is the early template of the High Table in the John Wick films. It's a wonderful little self-contained mythology. And yeah, those are my thoughts on the Assassination Bureau. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.